Hey guys, welcome back to Critical Flick. Today I'm gonna talk about Rampage. So I got an early screening to it, I just got back from it, so I wanted to jump into it as quick as possible. So let's talk about this movie. So I'm gonna say right off the bat, this movie is pretty much everything you expect this movie to be. It is so ridiculous, over the top, tons of CG, tons of crazy action, one-liners, just really cheesy stuff going on in the movie. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, this movie did feel like it is a high-budget sci-fi channel movie, which, in my opinion, is kind of entertaining. That's not really my type of movie. I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, it knows what it is, it's so bad, it's so stupid, but it knows it's stupid. But it kind of does work with this movie. And, you know, the story of this movie, it's pretty simple. You see it in the trailer. There's big monsters. These animals get infected with this rampage thing, and they just grow huge, and they just mass destruction, and there's kind of the whole stories about this evil corporation that created the toxin, the Rampage virus, they created like a militarized genome thing, that genetic transformation that makes them into weapons of mass destruction. It's a stupid thing. It kind of reminded me of Jurassic World, how they wanted to make the velociraptors into soldiers. It's kind of like that. This movie was directed by Brad Peyton, who also did San Andreas and Journey to the Center of the Earth too, so he's kind of familiar with The Rock and that over-the-top action stuff that The Rock does. And speaking of The Rock, he brings it, this movie, like he always brings it. He's the charismatic action hero that everybody loves, and I think people will be satisfied with his performance. This isn't any Oscar-worthy performing in this movie. And speaking of acting, Jeffrey Dean Morgan plays a character in this movie that is such a ridiculous, just character to play. He's like, kind of like if you could imagine the cartoon chicken Foghorn Leghorn mixed with Mr. Nobody from Fast and Furious. That's basically what he is. I know that sounds ridiculous, but it is literally what he is. He's this character that just pops up randomly, and he has this ridiculous southern drawl, and he just says these colloquial little goofy things, and he's always really relaxed in the most ridiculous situations. And I did find that character actually really entertaining. It was so stupid and just such a ridiculous character to be in a movie like this. And I really liked what he was on screen. The kind of female lead in the movie, played by Naomi Harris, she was kind of wasted. They kind of set a early backstory for her that could have been somewhat interesting and a little heartfelt, made you really root for her. But she was kind of just a plot device. She was kind of just the scientist that said what they needed to do, why things were happening, what the next step in the process was going to be. And yeah, I thought that she could have been elaborated on a little more. She was kind of like she wouldn't say damsel in distress, but she really served no purpose other than just to move the story along. The villains in this movie were so terrible. They were like literally sci-fi channel villains. You had a character played by Jake Lacey, who you might know from the final season of The Office, because I think that's the only thing I know him from. He overacts so much. He's really cooking it in this movie, and it's so bad. He's such a... that whole acting there, I'm sure it was scripted to be that bad. This movie, you can tell at times, was intentionally making these characters over-the-top ridiculous, and he was the best example of that. And it was awful. Like, that was one of the few times where something was so ridiculous and over the top and overacted that I was not entertained by it, and it was just really bad. The villains, they're throwaway. They're not really that important. They have no real ambition. They have no real depth. They're just the bad guys, the bad corporate greed characters, and yeah, I could have done without them. I didn't even really need them. They were just there to be the antagonists. They really didn't serve a greater purpose than that. But of course, what everyone just wants to talk about is the action in this movie. Is it good action? I would say yes. I would say it's entertaining. The movie does go completely off the rails in the third act, and the CG does get really bad, in my opinion, in the third act. It's tons of green screen that's really evident, especially in the end of the film where you see like the destroyed city, the scenes you saw from the trailer. It's so bad. Seeing like The Rock up against the green screen looks really bad. I will say, though, that the ape, George, actually looked pretty good. I thought he looked decent. We're not talking War of the Planet of the Apes good, but pretty solid. And I thought that the actual monsters themselves, when they weren't interacting with environments, they looked decent. They looked fine. It didn't look bad. It was just when everything was being destroyed, that just tends to always look bad in movies, and this is an exception to that. So overall, if you want to just kind of like a fun, dumb popcorn movie that you just want to go, I think people might enjoy it. It is just tons of action. It's The Rock being The Rock, tons of one-liners, really ridiculous characters, tons of giant monsters and destruction and stuff. So if you're into that, I think you'll enjoy it. It's kind of just a dumb, guilty pleasure movie. But that's probably what everyone thought it was going to be anyway. So it lived up to what it was going to be. So if I were to rate this movie, I would probably give it a 5.5 out of 10. It's not an amazing movie, but it's not the worst thing I've seen in the world. It isn't the most original thing, but, you know, It's entertaining. It's The Rock. It's destruction. It's just a fun type throwaway movie. It's not egregiously bad. It's not incredibly good. It's just following that same thing that The Rock does, where he just gets in these movies and somehow, I don't know, it's just his charisma, just something about it makes these movies fun to watch, and this is just another fun movie. Alright guys, remember to like and subscribe. Let me know what you thought about Rampage, if you see it, when you see it. Did you think it was so bad that it was just unenjoyable, or was it so bad that it's good? Or maybe you just thought it was plain good, because, I mean, that's possible. But yeah, at the end of the day, let me know what you think, and see you next time.